Welcome, everyone. My name is Johan Gustafsson. I'm from the Australian BioCommons, and I'd like to start the workshop with a bit of theory, a bit of information about the context, the why, and really help set the scene for making computational workflows findable and citable. So in terms of what I'm hoping, and I think what we're hoping that you'll learn from this workshop, there are really three things. It's going to be registering with WorkflowHub, so getting yourself set up on the platform. It's being able to create and or join WorkflowHub teams, because that's the units that you'll have to set up to contribute to the registry. And then, of course, being able to register workflows. So being able to understand that process and understanding how Workflow Hub assists in making your workflows findable and citable. So we'll start with why you'd want to make workflows findable in the first place. Hopefully, I shouldn't have to convince you that workflows are important. They are a fundamental unit when you want to move to a situation where you have highly reproducible and portable computation, sometimes that needs to span infrastructures. I've on this slide, I've got my favorite example of this, which was the global Galaxy workflow response to the analytical needs of the COVID-19 pandemic. We don't have time to go into it, but I would urge you to go and have a read if you haven't already, because some of the work that happened with these workflows really underscores why this kind of computation is so significant. If that wasn't enough, we can go look at some numbers. If we look at the estimate for the number of workflow languages that are in existence at the moment, the current number is 362. If we look at a really popular community effort, so NF Core for the Nextflow workflow management system, you can see that for a single one of their workflows, it's got more than 750 forks for their GitHub repository. And if we look at raw workflow numbers, or at least the numbers that we know of, if we look at the two registries, DocStore and WorkflowHub, you can see more than 4,500 in DocStore and just under 1,000 currently in WorkflowHub. And with the example of two of the Galaxy instances, Galaxy Europe and Galaxy Australia, you can see that the numbers of workflows that these platforms are housing is already significant. Um, Even though they're important, they can also be all of these things. Um, they can be complex. They can be time consuming to construct. They can be maintenance heavy, right? So the brittleness of workflows and the fact that they will often fail when you need to repair them. Um, they can be difficult to find. They can also be difficult to redeploy, even if you do happen to find them. And because of these difficulties, there's actually quite a lot of replication of workflows across the globe. And it's for these reasons that workflows, being the complex and time-consuming digital objects that they are, really should be findable, reusable, and citable. Someone should be able to find it. They should be able to understand and execute, or at the very least, re-implement it. And once they've done that, they should actually be able to give credit to the people who spent the time to create the workflow. The impacts of making a workflow findable and citable, of sharing a workflow, basically boil down to open science. So I've already covered things like reuse and citations and recognition of effort, but it's really also something that can support collaborations, help you build connections, reduce replication of effort, whether that's within your institution, within your country, or globally if you share workflows with collaborators overseas, but can also really support reproducibility in science. So the big question, where can you find workflows? So at the moment, there are a few options. Um, so you can start with a platform or a community repository. If you're aware of the workflow management system or you have a favorite platform that you like to use, like Galaxy, you can go straight to the source of many workflows, which is the version control systems and platforms for those version control systems like GitHub. You can, of course, go directly to the literature, and there are many publications that either will reference workflows that have been used for analyses, or even publications now that are focused solely on the workflow itself. And of course, search engines, which is one of the primary ways in which people will look for research software. So, in order to address sharing of workflows, I would argue consider a registry. And it's for these reasons that are listed here. And we're just going to step through these very, very quickly. A registry, for example, like WorkflowHub, is central. It's a convergence point. And so it doesn't matter whether you are a single researcher working on a single workflow or you are part of a larger workflow language community sharing workflows, or you're part of a research consortium or an infrastructure effort. If everyone is converging on a single registry, you have a place where you know that you can go to find workflows. They're obviously searchable, so this applies within the registry itself, but also registries like WorkflowHub actually surface metadata to search engines. So simply by virtue of registering a workflow, you make it more findable through search. Convergent efforts also mean that a lot more energy can be poured into integrating with the broader workflows ecosystem. So a really good example of that is the ability to integrate with version control systems like Git, which actually allow you to take advantage of all the effort that's been poured into creating and maintaining a workflow in its native repository and not replace that repository, but try to faithfully represent it and import that information into the registry. It also allows a level of standardization. So it levels the playing field for the types and the quality of metadata that can be contributed. And this means that it's also much easier for a workflow developer to know what kind of information might be useful for others to know. They don't have to think about it. They can just make use of the standardized metadata fields. As I alluded to before, it also allows for citability of workflows. So registries will often allow you to, at minimum, include a citation, and sometimes even allow you to generate a citation for your workflow. And that means you can include a link in a publication, for example, that won't break. So if you include a digital object identifier, for example. And finally, we have interoperability. So when you take advantage of efforts that focus in on registries that are integrated and standardized, it gives you the ability to present your workflows to a user in a very streamlined way, because the individual elements of the ecosystem are often made to interoperate with each other. The example I've given on this slide is of a how-to guide from the Australian BioCommons project, where we've made use of the interoperability between WorkflowHub and Galaxy to embed a link which a user clicks. It takes them to their Galaxy instance and prompts them to directly import the workflow for immediate execution. So hopefully that's convinced you that registries are overall a good idea for workflows. There are really two key options at the moment. The first one is based in the United States and is called DocStore. We won't go into Dockstore in too much detail, but as the name suggests, it has its origins in Docker containerization. And this registry was set up to enable sharing of standardized workflows across different computational infrastructures. The registry that we'll be talking about in quite a bit of detail today is WorkflowHub. So WorkflowHub is a European workflow registry. It is agnostic to workflow language and is intended for describing and sharing all scientific computational workflows, regardless of where they're from, what language they're written in. And so what we're now going to do is we are going to step by step go through the use of WorkflowHub, starting with getting set up on the registry, and then moving through to registering a workflow. So this is what you'll see when you first visit WorkflowHub. This is the landing page. We're now going to go through some of the steps to get set up on WorkflowHub. If you haven't already, one of the first things that you should be doing if you want to contribute any material to WorkflowHub is registering for an account. Alternately, you can use the ELIXIR Life Science login, and you can even use your GitHub credentials if you would like. It's worth noting that if you just want to view the information that's stored in WorkflowHub, you don't need to register with the registry. The next step along is to decide what kind of presence you want to have on the registry. It'll become clear in a minute why I'm starting with this, but in essence, a space is the biggest organizational unit on the registry, and it allows you to define your presence there. So if all you need is to create a team and begin registering workflows, and you don't need any higher level kind of management, then independent teams would be a really good option because that's the WorkflowHub administered space. If, on the other hand, for example, you belong to a big consortium and you want to have the ability to create your own teams and manage that space, then you can actually request your own. So you can see here, for example, that Australian BioCommons has our own space that we manage on WorkflowHub. The critical part of all of this is to either join an existing team or create a new one. So the example here is another one from the BioCommons effort. This is for Galaxy Australia. When you want to create a new team, there's actually one wizard that will accommodate all of these processes for you. So even though it might have seemed a bit involved when I was explaining it just now, this single wizard will actually take you through deciding, do you want to make use of an existing space like independent teams? Do you want to create a new space? So there's a box that you can tick, and it will then open up another prompt where you can request a new space. You can provide a title, description, and web page for the team that you want to create, and then you can specify your organization as well as some additional metadata to go with it. Once you've done that, that is actually the entirety of your setup on WorkflowHub. You've then reached the point where you can begin adding items. There are two types of core resources for WorkflowHub. One is the computational workflows themselves. The other one is collections, which are a way of bundling together workflows and all the other types of items that you can register, which give context to that workflow. And that's things like publications, documents, and standard operating procedures. This is an example of a team already set up. So this is the Queensland Cyber Infrastructure Foundation Bioinformatics team that's also part of BioCommons. You can see here that they have 5 people. They belong to one space and one organization, and they've registered 20 workflows, and you can see the list of workflows that they've registered there. It's important to note as well, this is something that I alluded to, these structures are actually flexible. They are flexible and extensible, such that if you just want a single team because you're just a single workflow developer, you can set that up. If you're a larger consortium with multiple teams and multiple spaces, you can also set that up. So it's possible to faithfully represent the structure of a collaboration that created a workflow within the registry. All right, so that's enough talking about registering a workflow. Let's actually look at what's needed to register a workflow. So once you have yourself set up on WorkflowHub, when you're on the main page, there are two ways you can start contributing. You can either click the big contribute button, or you can go to the drop-down menu called Create and select Workflow. The very first thing you will be asked to do in the wizard that opens is to select your import method for your workflow file. The two options that are shown here, the first one is the upload or import of files. This is either a local file on your computer or from a remote URL. The next option down is, as I mentioned before, the ability to import a Git repository. And the final option that is available, and this isn't one that we'll go into detail today, but it is also possible to upload or import a workflow research object crate. A research object crate is a way to bundle together all of the files needed to describe a workflow, along with a flat metadata file that actually explains the relationships between all those files. If you want to read more about the research object crates, I've provided some links on this slide here. All right, so the example I'm going to go through here is for importing a Git repository. And here you, in essence, provide a URL for a Git repository to WorkflowHub, and you push register. The very first thing it will ask you to do is to pick branches and tags, a branch or a tag from your repository. I always prefer using tags. And once you've selected one of those, you then push register again. And this is now basically what you're now doing is stepping through a wizard that's going to guide you through to creating a complete workflow entry. The next step is selecting a main executable workflow. So when you click on that empty line there, a dialog will open up to allow you to select which file is the main workflow file. So you can see in the example here, it happens to be a Galaxy workflow. Once you click select, that will also auto register as a Galaxy workflow type. And here you also have the option of adding a abstract CWL for describing the main workflow, as well as a diagram that illustrates the workflow. When you then confirm and move on to the next section of the wizard, this is where as much metadata as can be ingested from the Git repository is ingested and is presented to you for editing. So you can see here that the workflow type has been detected successfully. The title and description have been imported, as has the source. There's now the opportunity to add things like ontology terms, so shorthand annotations for the topic area and the operation that your workflow undertakes. You can set things like the maturity. You can add additional teams, right? So a workflow can belong to more than one team, so you can add additional teams there if needed. You can see up on the right here that the license has been auto-detected as an Apache license. You have the opportunity to change the sharing settings. So if you don't want to make your workflow public just yet, you can do that. If you want to change who from the various teams can edit or manage the workflow, you can do that there as well. And you also have the ability to set custom tags if the ontology terms aren't, or if there are ontology terms that you would like and you want to add a custom tag. And you can see here that the creators have been auto-populated from a standard file in the Git repository, but you also have the opportunity there to edit the creators. Also, just want to point out here that because EDOM ontology terms are mentioned, that EDOM browser is a really useful tool for searching and navigating that ontology, so you can find the right terms to include for your workflow. Once that's complete and you push register, your workflow entry will be complete, and then you can actually review it and make sure that everything that you wanted to include is included, and you then are able to edit it and enrich the metadata or the descriptions as needed. And so just a quick look at a best practice example. This is a workflow where structured documentation has been imported from GitHub, which really well describes the workflow. A diagram has been included. There's a complete author list or creator list for the workflow in the correct order, which is really important because these workflow developers have chosen to mint a digital object identifier for their workflow. And so in that case, the author order and completeness of that list is really important. A license is specified, and there are annotations for both topic and operation. All right. That brings us to the end of the description of WorkflowHub. Everything that I've presented and all the things that I've spoken about are really the culmination of a lot of effort by a lot of people. I want to acknowledge first and foremost all the workflow developers out there. WorkflowHub is there and registries are there to support you and help make your workflows findable and citable. Obviously, want to acknowledge WorkflowHub, the registry, and all of the different groups that I work with and the institutions that I happen to work with. This is absolutely not exhaustive, but yes, thank you to everyone who's been involved.